If you would have told me at the beginning of the 2024 college football season that Jackson Arnold would get benched, I would have called you crazy. Jackson Arnold had one of the best careers of any Texas high school football quarterback ever, was seen as pretty much a sure bet to hit at the college level, and was probably going to do 1 or 2 more years before going off to the NFL. That's how good Jackson Arnold was. He went to one of the most prestigious high schools in the state, had pretty much everything going for him, but now as we are a month into the 2024 college football season, he's been benched for true freshman quarterback Michael Hawkins Jr. In today's video, I'm going to try to explain what the heck has happened. How did Jackson Arnold go from a 5-star prodigy quarterback to now being on the bench? He'll most likely transfer at the end of the season if Hawkins continues to do well, and people will kind of forget about him. Today we're going to go through the entire Jackson Arnold story and do a what happened to video for him. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, topic, team, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about what happened to Jackson Arnold. So the Jackson Arnold football story starts in North Gwinnett in Sewanee, Georgia, as he played football as a 6-year-old and remembers loving one thing the most about it. Quote, "I like just being in control of everything. Back then I didn't realize the whole scope of it and how much I could actually control, but kind of just having the ball in my hands every offensive play is something I remember from the very start." A few years later, he would throw a 35-yard pass that would stun the adults in the audience, and many knew that Arnold was going to be a big-time player someday. It actually ran in his family, as his father Todd was a running back at Wofford, and by the time he was 3, he tried to play golf, baseball, and football. Growing up in Georgia, Arnold grew up idolizing Georgia quarterbacks, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Murray, and Jake Fromm. He'd end up moving to Texas and would eventually settle on Denton Guyer High School, which produced former big-time quarterbacks like J.W. Walsh at Oklahoma State, Sean Robinson at TCU and Mizzou, and Gerard Hurd at Texas. Arnold was next up. Before his junior season, Arnold was ready to get going with his recruitment, saying, quote, "I knew barely anything about recruiting before it started, so it's all new to me. I'm planning to go to some places like Oklahoma State, TCU, and I want to go to Arkansas, SMU, and Texas." Despite being a dual sport athlete, playing center field in baseball, he was an unrated quarterback who saw football as his primary sport and would try to take things to the next level. During his sophomore season, Arnold was the secondary quarterback to Eli Stowers, who was a 4-star recruit who went to Texas A&M and is now a tight end for Vanderbilt. He ended up throwing for 140 yards and ran for 227 yards with 2 touchdowns as a backup. But this was on his first time playing for Denton, as a year prior, he was thrown into the state championship game as Stowers went down with an injury. Suddenly, Arnold was thrust into his first significant action of his high school career in the state title game. He might have weighed 170 pounds soaking wet at the time, and he had hardly ever worked with their first team offense either, but it did not faze him. Arnold would get hit over and over and over in that game, and the Wildcats never found the end zone. Austin Westlake cruised to a state title with a 24-0 victory, and his coach said, quote, "He was not at all ready to play as he just got thrown to the wolves, but I still vividly remember watching that kid compete, completely overwhelmed from a physical standpoint and preparation standpoint, but the grit that he showed in that game, he did not back down, and they were rattling his cage, and he never once gave up the fight." Afterwards, he was covered in scrapes, turf burns, and bruises, and Arnold walked through the front door of the family home in tears and buried his head into his mother's neck as he was shaken and hardened by his rude introduction into Texas high school football. His mom said, quote, "That night a little boy grew up, and he grew into a man." That was the first time the world was introduced to Jackson Arnold, but he would soon take the world by storm. With the starting job in his hands as a junior in 2021, Arnold completed 66% of his passes for 34 touchdowns in just under 4,000 passing yards. Arnold had now taken off, and his high school coach said, quote, "Jackson Arnold may have been the greatest backup quarterback in the history of Texas high school football his sophomore year." After that, the offers flew in. First big-time school to really start pursuing Arnold was Arkansas, as Kendall Briles saw him as the future of the Arkansas program, and from then on, Arnold only rose in the eyes of scouts. In 1 year, he went from a backup to a 4-star, and it was insane. He said, quote, "It was really awesome. It's exciting to see all of my hard work pay off and a childhood dream of mine come true, and I'm thankful to experience the things I have." Not only was he a football star, but he's also a baseball star, and he chose football and began to take the recruiting world seriously, as he had a few big schools in mind. He visited Notre Dame, Oklahoma, TCU, and Ole Miss, but with the Sooners having 5-star quarterback Malachi Nelson committed, he probably was not going to go there. His senior season was historic, as he was named the Max Preps Player of the Year in Texas and finished the year accounting for 4,400 yards of total offense with 57 touchdowns. He completed 69% of his passes and just threw 3 picks. He also added another 900 yards on the ground and 24 touchdowns. Those are video game-like numbers, and he also won a lot of games and brought success to Denton Guyer High School. He led the Wildcats to an undefeated regular season, finishing the year at 14-1 after a loss in the Class 6A Division II semifinals. The pressure of playing 6A football in Texas was tough. He said, quote, "It can get a little heavy at times with rankings and offers and all that stuff, but I try not to let it affect me at all, but it can weigh me down a little bit." He ended up winning the National Player of the Year and was the Elite 11 winner, beating out both Malachi Nelson and Arch Manning. But where was he going to go? Well, he had made up his mind over a year ago. For a little while, Notre Dame was in the mix, but ultimately it was Oklahoma for multiple reasons. The coaches were a big factor. He said, quote, "Lebby was one of my first offers, so I've been high on him since he was at Ole Miss. I've kept a good connection with him and talked to them every week since then. I built a great relationship, and I knew it was the place to be." The system was also perfect for him. His offense is what they ran at his high school. They had a fast tempo, wide splits, RPOs, and it was just fun to play at. He also loved Coach Venables, the quarterback tradition, the proximity to home, and his good friend, wide receiver Ashton Kotzart, was also headed to Oklahoma, but he has since gone to Oregon. It also helped that Malachi Nelson flipped to USC after Lincoln Riley left for Oklahoma, so now it would be Arnold's spot in the 2023 class. Despite it being a disappointing season for Oklahoma in 2022, Arnold stayed the course and enrolled early at Oklahoma. In total, he was 28-3 as a starter, passed for 7,497 yards, and had 67 touchdowns. Since his meteoric rise, he was named a 5-star recruit, the number 4 quarterback and the 8th best player in the class of 2023. So how'd he end up doing at Oklahoma? Well, the only quarterbacks who have arrived at Norman more highly touted than him were Caleb Williams and Rhett Bomar. He was also ranked higher than Spencer Rattler. What were his goals for being at Oklahoma? He said, quote, "Hopefully a lot of wins, a national championship, a Heisman maybe, but more so a national championship. That would be ideal." But why will he be any different from the other big-time quarterback recruits? Well, his coach said, quote, "His arm strength, release, field vision, athleticism, and his 6'1", 205-pound frame." He also had the ability to extend plays and a knack for lifting up his teammates. What did Arnold expect for his freshman year? He said, quote, "If my number gets called upon to play, I'm going to be ready to play. But I'm expecting to learn under Dylan and learn from him, and I'm ready to go, but I'm also ready to just learn and soak up everything I can for him." Okay, so in 2023, Arnold would only appear in 6 total games, as 5 of them were in the regular season, and he scored touchdowns against both Arkansas State and Tulsa. He actually had 2 against the Red Wolves in Week 1. Dillon Gabriel had taken over for the season and had since decided to transfer to Oregon after the year was over, so Arnold would get an opportunity to play in their bowl game. Against number 14 Arizona, who had a meteoric rise under Jedd Fisch and Noah Fifita, Arnold would make his first career start and was definitely solid. He went 26 of 45 for 361 yards with 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Yes, those 3 interceptions were concerning, but at the same time it was his first career start, and he showed plenty of promise and potential for the future. In total, he had 563 yards with 4 touchdowns and 3 picks, and also had a rushing score on the ground. Dillon Gabriel was gone, and now it was time for the Jackson Arnold era to take over in Norman. This is exactly the kind of schedule he was hoping to follow, as he'd do 1 year behind Gabriel, and then become a starter for 2 seasons and go off to the NFL. Except, I now know the reason why Jackson Arnold is honestly struggling. It's because his offensive coordinator, Jeff Lebby, left. Jeff Lebby ended up becoming such a big deal at Oklahoma that he took the head coaching job at Mississippi State. The SEC program had fallen on hard times after the passing of Mike Leach, and then their guy in 2023 just did not fit well. Mississippi State is historically tough to win at, but Jeff Lebby was hoping to turn things, and he's definitely in for a rebuild there. He took the head coaching job in Starkville and did not bring Jackson Arnold with him. If there's anything I've gathered so far, it's that Jackson Arnold played in a style of offense similar to Lebby's in high school, and obviously he spent all of last year learning that system. Who did Coach Venables bring in to replace him? He brought in his buddy Seth Luttrell. He's currently the OC and QB's coach for Oklahoma. As if you don't know him, he was a member of the 2000 National Championship team, and he was previously the head coach at North Texas. Luttrell ended up becoming a big deal at one point and was seen as a coach who could make it at the Power 5 level, but ultimately he flamed out and is now the OC at Oklahoma. I believe his system is definitely different than Jeff Lebby's, and all of a sudden, he had to learn a new style, and that is ultimately what I think hurt Jackson Arnold more than anything. I think a lot of people forget how much work and how difficult it is for a quarterback to understand a new system, especially if he's been doing it for 6 or 7 years straight. It's not something that can just be fixed in one day, and then add in the fact that his receivers have been a problem this year, and he's still new to starting at the collegiate level. It was a recipe for disaster for Jackson Arnold. Currently, he is getting all the blame, but still though, there is some blame to be put on him. So far in 2024, Arnold was not doing great, as in his first game against Temple, he ended up throwing for 141 yards and 4 touchdowns, which was obviously solid, but you could tell something was still a little bit off. In week 2 against Houston, we saw that on full speed, as he ended up going 19 of 32 for 174 yards with 2 touchdowns and a pick, but more importantly, they struggled against a really bad Cougars team. In week 3, Arnold didn't get much better. If anything, he regressed, as he went 18 of 29 for 169 yards with a touchdown and a pick. But at the same time, he ran for 2 touchdowns and nearly 100 yards on the ground. So honestly, Jackson Arnold's first 3 games weren't all that bad. He was a new starter, and he still had 9 touchdowns in 3 games, which is definitely not bad. The problem is his QBR has been terrible, as currently it is 35.3, and then his performance against Tennessee really put them in a tough spot. Yes, I know Tennessee is a national championship caliber level of defense, but against the Volunteers, Arnold went 7 of 16 for 54 yards and a pick, and he also got sacked multiple times. They ended up benching him in favor of Michael Hawkins Jr., and to Arnold's horror, Michael Hawkins actually got things going and seemed to show a little bit more heart. I can't judge Arnold's personality, but it at least looked like Hawkins wanted to be out there and was fighting until the absolute end. Because of that, Venables decided to put Arnold on the bench, and they rolled with Michael Hawkins Jr., and he just went and beat Auburn on the road. And now it looks like it's going to be Michael's team, and just because of one bad half essentially, Jackson Arnold is done, and it looks like he'll have to find a new school, unless Hawkins is really terrible, or Arnold wants to come back and figure things out. According to his Sooners Illustrated magazine, Venables would try to call Arnold after that Oklahoma game, Venables would try to call him after that Tennessee game, and it went straight to voicemail or was on Do Not Disturb, as no one could really get a hold of Arnold, and he was definitely unplugging for the night. In a world in which there's so much ridiculous pressure on players, and there's so much media hate and so much of a firestorm, I definitely feel a little bit bad for Jackson Arnold. I don't think he's gotten a fair opportunity at Oklahoma just yet, as right now it looks like Tennessee is a legitimate playoff team, and having one bad half should not be enough to bench him. Except that's how the football world works. You are not guaranteed anything, and especially at the quarterback spot, if your backup does better than you, he might take your job. So what's the future for Arnold? Well, let's hope that he gets another opportunity at Oklahoma here, but for now it looks like Hawkins' team. If we assume that, I think I know exactly where Jackson Arnold is going next fall. He'll either go back home to a school in Texas like Baylor or Texas Tech, as Baylor will have to find a new quarterback and Texas Tech will be losing Baron Morton, but most likely I think he'll reunite with Jeff Lebby. It's the system he's comfortable in, it's the coach he's comfortable in, and he'll get an opportunity to play in the SEC and go to a low-key school. Blake Shapen was hurt for the year, and currently the Bulldogs are rolling with a true freshman quarterback, and it seems like a perfect fit for Jackson Arnold to go to Starkville and hopefully revive his career down there. This is all hypothetical though, but for now, Jackson Arnold has unfortunately been a bust. Most of it I don't think is really his fault, as he's not gotten a lot of chance or opportunity, but still though, he was a 5-star quarterback who was benched after just 3.5 games. What do you think though? If you're an Oklahoma fan, why was Jackson Arnold benched? What are you guys going to do in the future at the quarterback position? And what other players should I take a look at in my next video? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you didn't support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.